Hello everyone, Oli here, and this is my review of Vengeance on Varos. The second story of the 22nd season of classic Doctor Who, starring Colin Baker as the Sixth Doctor. Vengeance on Varos is the 139th story overall. It's 2 parts long and is written by Philip Martin. So the plot of the story is as follows. The TARDIS is adrift. Deprived from a vital power source, the Doctor and Perry have one last hope, the planet Varos. But Varos is a dangerous place. Trapped in the dreaded punishment dome, the Doctor and Perry must fight for their lives and save the starving population from the machinations of the villainous reptilian Cell. So that is the plot of Vengeance on Varos. Vengeance on Varos, I think, it's a brilliant story, and it's one of Colin Baker's critically acclaimed stories, and I have to agree, but it's not a perfect 10 in my opinion. But it is a very good story, and it was one of my favourites of this era. The production was very well done, although it does kind of leave an impression that Vengeance on Varos was filmed on location, but it was all filmed in the TV studio. The sets were very well done, especially I liked how dark the punishment dome was, as it shows how run down, dangerous and depressing the dome was, where most of the story actually took place, and even Atta and Varroc's home, it was very... Atta and Eric's home, it looked very depressing, so to speak, because they're just literally just working to the bone until they probably died, and it was very looking like that as well. And it was quite interesting as well. The special effects I thought were quite good, and I like the makeup of when Sir wanted to have Perry transformed into a bird woman, and we do see in some promo shots in this story, and even here, this is actually Perry. This is one of the production shots from this story of Perry as a bird woman, and then we only see like a brief bit of it in part 2, but then she's pretty much turned back to normal. The script was quite good, and the production by Ron Jones was quite good as well. And I think the plot of the story is quite interesting, as it does have a theme very unique to Doctor Who, especially the Colin Baker era, as it was very anti-establishment, anti-government, in addition to the message and the metaphor of government/major corporations using the suffering of real people for the entertainment of real people at home, which also does the theme does actually age well, especially in today's society where considering the fact this has been a thing since the 90s, 2000s, where people are literally just put on the spotlight and reality TV and whatnot, and pretty much being ridiculed by people from the media and just random people on at home. And these will probably either be celebrities or just people that you probably see on like just ordinary Joes like us, for instance. So it does also have that theme as well, which I thought was quite interesting, even though it also is quite extreme as well, but it was very interesting to look at and dissect. And I also liked how Arak and Atta were pretty much used as a literal audience substitute. So even when Sir had been defeated and all the problems of Varos had been destroyed, they were pretty much wondering, because they were living in such a very violent regime, and they were so accustomed to it as well. Once it was all over, they were just thinking to themselves, what do they do next? Because the thing had they been used to for so long is pretty much no longer there, and obviously these people, they still work to the bone and stuff, so would they go back to normal work? Will there be more subsidies for them or benefits for them to take a hold of? Obviously, it's very interesting to see us as viewers in this story as well, as part of the story's narrative, which was quite clever to do. And also for Vengeance on Varos had some very interesting moments, especially when the Doctor and Perry showed up when Jonda was about to get killed, but then they were able to save him. Also, I thought the part 1 cliffhanger was very good as well. So the Doctor was pretty much trapped in this corridor, and he was pretty much made as if he was dehydrated, and then he sees this vision of Perry, which was actually a hologram of him Perry taunting the Doctor with water, and it was as if he was stuck in this desert, and he was just... It seemed as if he was going to die of dehydration and just collapsed on the floor as if he was going to die. And I thought that scene was very well done. I think Colin Baker acted that scene quite well, and it was nice to see the Doctor and some Perry as opposed to Perry. Well, for the time being anyways, because at that point she'd actually been captured. The fake execution scene that was very much early in part 2 was very well done as well, and I liked the surprise when... And I also liked the surprise when the Doctor and Jonda realised that they weren't actually getting killed, because the execution was used as a way to try and get the information out of the Doctor and Jonda. And I think the scene later on when the governor was trying to talk Maldak around into not executing him, but having a little heart to heart about how it's very obvious that if the governor dies, it's very likely that Maldak would have been chosen as the next governor, which actually does work, and it actually does help the Doctor and Perry stop still. And I thought the ending was quite good as well. Obviously, with Atta, Arak, and Etta wondering what to do with their lives now that the regime was over, so they were just wondering what are they going to do now. So it was a very interesting scene. On to the acting. Colin Baker did a great job. The Doctor was still quite difficult as he was in the last few stories, but he does have some very good moments and actually does more to try and save the day. And obviously, then Colin Baker is really settling into the role and quite well. I did like his acting in the part one cliffhanger. It was pretty much going to die of dehydration, but then it was pretty much a way to just capture him. And obviously, he had been taunted by the illusion of Perry, which was actually a hologram, taunting him with water. And I also think that there's also some misconception about the Doctor actually killing those two guys in the story. I think some of the story detractors have said that the Doctor actually kills two people, even though that wasn't really the case because he was sort of responsible, but then he didn't actually he didn't actually push them in, so to speak, because I think the Doctor was. It looked like he had actually died, but the Doctor had pretty much woken up, and then one of the guys was so surprised, and he actually fell into the pool out of shock, and then the other guy was trying to fight it, and then the other guy that fell into the acid bath just pretty much pulled the other guy in, and then the Doctor was like, "Don't mind if I don't join you." So that was a very funny scene, and it was a very nasty, in a way, one-liner from the Sick Doctor, which was also quite iconic. I also like how the Doctor was more determined to save Perry, especially when her and Aretta were captured by salesmen, and he does save her and actually revive her. Nicola Bryant was great here as well. Perry actually does a bit of heavy lifting as well, and I think this is definitely one of her better performances as Perry. And even though Perry does fall victim to the Perry effect in some parts of the story, and she actually does get captured at the end of part one and is experimented on when she is turned into the bird woman, so to speak, and then you have still pretty much saying she's almost attractive now, and then the Doctor pretty much just comes in and saves her at the last minute. However, she does get captured again shortly afterwards, and she's with the governor for his final vote, where it looks like that they're going to get killed together. I do like her bickering with the Doctor at the start of the story, and they don't really bicker for a vast majority of the story because they understand how severe the situation they're in, so to try and save everyone on Varos, so that was quite cool, and they pretty much and how they put their minor petty differences aside to try and for this story, as they pretty much thrust into the plot immediately. So onto the sidecast, and to be frank, they were all quite good, and they all helped this story being very good as well. So first off, we have Etta and Arak. They are this middle-aged couple who are basically audience substitutes for this story, and they pretty much watch the entire thing play out from their homes, so to speak. And obviously, they had to vote for things like executions, whether this person should be executed or not, not murders, and elections as well, and whatnot, whilst living in this dystopian world on Varos, and the grim events of what was actually going on in the punishment dome. It seemed that it was pretty much getting them through the hard times, but then Etta was more empathetic, and she actually liked the Doctor, but Arat was more cynical and more stubborn, and it was just didn't really care for much. And at one point, he voted for, I think, the Doctor's execution or something. No, he actually voted for like the governor's execution, but then Etta refuses not to vote, and he actually trying to vote twice using her vote, which doesn't really happen, so to speak. But at the end, when the governor announced that what they were used to, the era of torture and whatnot, was over, they were wondering what they're going to do afterwards. Although I like their inclusion, but I did find them a little bit uninteresting. Then we have Jonda. He is a rebel prisoner who was set for execution, but he was saved by the Doctor and Perry when the TARDIS had landed there, and he was reunited with his wife Aretta. He aided the Doctor and Perry, and he was almost executed the Doctor, but it was a forced execution because the governor still wanted to get more information out of them. And he successfully aided the Doctor in stopping Syl's control of Varos. He's a very good character, and he's actually played by Jason Connery, who is the son of the late Sean Connery, who we all know who played James, who's the first James Bond actor. Then we have Rondo. He was one of the guards in Varos, and he was John the narrator's friend. The two meet up with Dr. Perry and Jonda, but then he was later shot and killed. Then we have Areta. She was another prisoner. She was Jonda's wife. She aided the Doctor also, but her and Perry got captured. Whilst Perry was getting captured, whilst Perry was about to turn into this reptile, this bird woman, she was getting turned into some sort of reptile, but then luckily the Doctor and Jonda got to save them on time. And then we have the governor. As it says in the tin, he's the leader of Varos. He wasn't actually elected as such, but then he became the governor when he took part in the ballot to see who would become the governor, and whoever drew the red card, so to speak, would become the governor, which he did. He tried to negotiate a high price for the Zayton 7 mineral, which the Doctor actually wanted to try and help the TARDIS, but then his attempts were halted by his chief officer who was working with Syl, who was a representative from the Galvatron Mining Corporation. He was always undermined by Syl and was later saved by execution from Maldak, one of his guards. And when he found the actual value of Zayton 7, he put an end to the end of the extremist regime on Varos. He was an okay actor, but he was also quite dry. And he was played by Martin Jarvis, who was actually played in Doctor Who in the past. Then we have Krillum. He was the technical director and the principal deviser on Varos, and was pretty much controlling everything in the punishment dome. He sports a very nasty looking disfiguration, as he'd been experimenting on himself, similar to Shower's Jackson disfiguration, but his own is more self-inflicted more than Shower's Jackson was. He had this transmogrify which turned his victims into pretty much anything he wanted. For example, he wanted to turn Perry into the bird woman and Eret into this reptile. He was quite ruthless, and he met a very gruesome end along with the chief officer when they were killed by deadly vines. Then we have Maldak. He was an office guard on Varos, and he saw the TARDIS land inside the punishment dome and thought he was hallucinating, but he was actually knocked out. He was guarding the governor during the final vote before it was able to happen, but the governor was able to have a conversation with him, which Maldak saw reason to, and he actually helped them escape. And I liked how he changed loyalty at the end. He's played by a young Owen Teale, who went on to play Sir Alistair Thorne in Game of Thrones. I was literally driving myself crazy trying to remember this character, and then when I saw Maldak, I was thinking, this guy looks very familiar. And then obviously doing the research for this review, and I realized it was him. So yeah, those were our side cast. And now we have our enemies. First off, we have the chief officer. He was Syl's right-hand man, and he was keeping the price of Zayton 7 mineral, the mineral of Zayton 7 low. He died alongside Krillum when they were attacked by the killer vines, and the main enemy was Syl. He's a representative of the Galvatron Mining Corporation, and he lied about the value of Zayton 7 so he could get it for cheap. So Syl was obviously a sadist, and he took interest in the tortures and execution on Varos, which the Doctor put an end to when the governor actually found out the real value of the mineral. And obviously with his fascination with the tortures and deaths on Varos, he actually wanted to distribute it across other planets as well. So Syl was a very good villain, and he was quite theatrical and quite vile, and it's no wonder he actually returned in Trial of a Time Lord. On to the faults of the story. I do feel like this story tries a bit too hard to emulate the success of the Caves of Androzani, complete with a dire environment, corrupt corporations / government officials, violent deaths, high death counts, and horrible looking characters, and even other stories in the season tries to copy that. Although in other stories, this story actually does come close to Caves of Androzani in a way, so to speak, but it's not as good as Caves. The start was a bit slow, but it picked up, and also I didn't really like how the Perry effect was used once again, where she gets captured a few times, and it was almost turned into a bird woman, and so actually says she's almost attractive. So to conclude, I think Vengeance on Varos is a very brave and ambitious story that pays off big, despite having some faults that really does hinder this story. And some of these faults we do see again in this season, and it does hinder the Colin Baker's era quite a bit. But it's a fan favourite for a reason, and it is one of my favourite stories, so I give the story a 9 out of 10. My next review will be The Mark of the Rani, a story which sees the debut of the villainous Time Lady herself, hopefully on the return of the master. So thanks for watching this review. Please let me know what you thought of Vengeance and Varos in this review. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already. Until then, see you later.